In 1903, in a small wooden shed in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, two young men named William Harley and Arthur Davidson built a motorcycle that would define American freedom for over a century. That single-cylinder engine, mounted on a bicycle frame, would grow into a company worth billions. A company that did not just sell motorcycles, it sold an identity, a lifestyle, the American dream on two wheels. And back in 2016, a 123-year-old company from Chennai, India, opened its North American headquarters in that exact same city. That company is Royal Enfield. And they did not choose Milwaukee by accident. They chose it because they are coming for everything Harley-Davidson built. And based on the numbers, they are winning. Let me show you what's happening right now. In fiscal year 2025, Royal Enfield crossed 1,002,893 motorcycle sales for the first time in the company's history. That's a 10% increase from the year before. Meanwhile, Harley-Davidson shipped just 124,477 motorcycles, down 16% from the year before, down 17% from the year before that. Do the math. Royal Enfield is now selling nearly 8 motorcycles for every single Harley that leaves a dealership, 8 to 1, and that ratio is getting worse every quarter. But the sales gap is just the beginning of this story. Let's talk about money, because the financial picture is even more dramatic. As of February 2026, Eicher Motors, Royal Enfield's parent company, has a market capitalization of approximately $25 billion. Harley-Davidson, about $2.4 billion. That's not a typo. The Indian motorcycle company is now worth more than 10 times the American icon. And here's what makes this truly stunning. Just 2 years ago, in early 2022, the gap between these companies was only about $4 billion. Eicher was worth roughly $10 to $11 billion. Harley was around $6 billion. A reasonable gap between a growing company and an established one. Today, that gap has exploded to over $22 billion. Eicher gained roughly $12.5 billion in value. Harley lost over $2 billion in just 2 years. The swing was not gradual, it was a reversal. A collapse on one side and a surge on the other happening simultaneously. Harley's stock is down 60% from 2022 levels. They are trading 64% below their all-time high, and the bleeding is not slowing down. Every earnings report brings more bad news. Every quarter, the gap gets wider. So how did we get here? How did the company that literally invented American motorcycle culture end up being crushed by a brand that most Americans had never heard of 10 years ago? To understand that, we need to look at what has been happening inside Harley-Davidson, and it is not pretty. Let's start with the financial results that came out last month. In fiscal year 2025, Harley posted revenue of $4.47 billion. That sounds like a lot until you realize it is down 14% from the year before. Not down a little, down 14% in 1 year. But revenue is not even the scary part. Revenue can decline while profits hold. That is not what happened. The motorcycle segment, the actual business of selling Harleys, the thing that made this company an American legend, the core of everything they do, reported an operating loss of $29 million. Let me be clear about what that means. Not a smaller profit, not breaking even, a loss. They lost money selling motorcycles. The previous year, that same segment made $278 million in profit. That is a $300 million swing in the wrong direction in a single year. And the first quarter of 2025 was even worse. Shipments collapsed 33%. Revenue dropped 23%. Net income fell 43%. That is not a business hitting a rough patch. That is a business in free fall. In May 2025, Harley did something they almost never do. They pulled their financial guidance entirely. Executives got on a call with investors and essentially said they did not know what was going to happen. They could not predict their own future. The reasons they gave were tariffs, economic uncertainty, declining demand. But really what they were saying was this: we have lost control of the narrative. We do not know how to fix this. Tariffs cost them $67 million in 2025. They are projecting between $75 million and $105 million in 2026. That is real money, but it is also a convenient excuse for a company that was struggling long before tariffs became headline news. Now let's talk about Harley's big bet on the future, electric motorcycles, Livewire. In the first quarter of 2025, Livewire sold 33 motorcycles. I need you to hear that number again, not 33,000. 33, 3, 3. That is down 72% from the already dismal numbers the year before. For the entire year of 2025, Livewire moved 653 units total. The operating loss was $75 million. They are losing roughly $115,000 on every single electric motorcycle they sell. To put that in perspective, Tesla sells more than 400,000 electric vehicles every quarter. Harley's entire electric division, their big pivot to the future, sold 653 motorcycles in an entire year while burning $75 million. This was supposed to be the answer. This was supposed to attract younger riders. This was supposed to be the future. Instead, it has become an expensive reminder that Harley does not understand what their customers actually want. The leadership knows there's a problem. That's why Chief Executive Officer Jochen Zeitz retired in April 2025. Officially, the company called it retirement. Unofficially, activist investors had been circling for months. There were calls for his head. The board pushed him out with a polite press release. The board brought in a new Chief Executive Officer in October 2025. His name is Artie Starrs. His previous job, the role that qualified him to run America's most iconic motorcycle company, was running Topgolf. Sit with that for a second. The company that defined American motorcycle culture for 120 years, the company that sold rebellion and freedom and the open road, is now being run by a guy whose last job was overseeing a chain of golf entertainment venues. Artie Starrs has no motorcycle industry experience. He's never run a manufacturing company. He's never sold a vehicle of any kind. But he's now the Chief Executive Officer of Harley-Davidson. This is Harley's third Chief Executive Officer in 5 years. The instability at the top mirrors the chaos running through the entire organization. But here's the thing that should really terrify anyone holding Harley stock. The demographic crisis they've been ignoring for 20 years is finally arriving, and there's no way to outrun it. The median age of a Harley-Davidson buyer is now around 52 years old. Only 8% of their market share comes from riders under 30. 8%. That's not a youth movement. That's an aging customer base with no replacement in sight. Baby boomers built Harley-Davidson. They bought the bikes in the 1980s and the 1990s. They joined the Harley Owners Group, the legendary HOG chapters. They got the tattoos, they wore the leather, they made Harley into a cultural phenomenon, and now they're aging out of riding. Some are too old to safely operate a 600-pound motorcycle. Some have health issues, some have bad backs and bad knees and doctors telling them to slow down. And let's be honest about this next part, because it matters to the numbers, some of them are dying. The used Harley market tells this story brutally. Prices have collapsed by roughly 40% over the past 2 years. Dealerships are flooded with trade-ins, estate sales are dumping inventory. All those baby boomers who bought Road Kings and Ultra Glides are trying to sell them, and there aren't enough buyers. Their kids don't want them. Millennials don't want them. Generation Z definitely doesn't want them. The bikes are too heavy, too expensive, and they carry the baggage of their parents' generation. Now let's flip to the other side of this story. Because while Harley is collapsing, Royal Enfield is executing one of the most impressive growth strategies in the motorcycle industry. First, the basics. Royal Enfield sold 1,002,893 motorcycles in fiscal year 2025. That's a 10% increase year over year. It's the first time in the company's 123-year history that they have crossed the 1 million mark. Exports grew even faster, up nearly 30%, reaching over 100,000 units shipped outside India. Think about that number for a second. Royal Enfield's exports alone, just the bikes they ship outside their home market, are now approaching Harley's total global retail sales. The company that Harley probably dismissed as a regional Indian player 5 years ago is now matching their entire global volume with just their export business. Revenue for fiscal year 2025 hit 18,870 crore rupees. That's roughly $2.21 billion in American money, up 14% from the year before. Net profit reached 4,734 crore rupees, about $556 million, up 18%. Here's where the comparison gets embarrassing for Harley. Royal Enfield's net profit of $556 million is actually higher than Harley's $328 million. Despite having roughly half the revenue, Royal Enfield is making more profit with a smaller operation because their margins are better and their costs are dramatically lower. The EBITDA margin sits at around 25%. That's exceptional for a manufacturing company. They're not just growing fast, they're growing profitably. Manufacturing capacity is currently 1.46 million units, and they are actively expanding to 2 million units by fiscal year 2028. They are investing in capacity that Harley does not need, because Harley cannot sell the bikes they are already capable of making. Royal Enfield is now the 6th largest motorcycle manufacturer in the world, not 6th in India, 6th globally, and climbing. So why is Royal Enfield winning while Harley collapses? Let me break down the 3 strategic pillars they are using. Number 1, price. Royal Enfield's lineup starts at $4,399 for the Hunter 350 and tops out at $6,899 for the Super Meteor 650. Their whole range from entry-level to flagship fits under $7,000. Harley's cheapest bike, after they just slashed prices in desperation to compete, is the Nightster at $9,999. That's their entry point. Under 10 grand is as cheap as they can go. But the real comparison happens at the higher end. Harley's Sportster S costs $15,999. That's their play for the mid-market. For that exact same money, you could buy 2 Royal Enfield Interceptor 650s at $6,199 each. You would have both bikes in your garage and $3,600 still in your pocket. That's not a small price difference. That's a completely different market, a completely different customer, a completely different decision. Younger riders, the ones Harley desperately needs to attract, do not have $20,000 sitting around for a motorcycle. Many do not have $15,000. They have $5,000, maybe $6,000. And Royal Enfield is waiting right there with exactly what they want at exactly the price they can afford. Number 2, community. This is where Royal Enfield is playing chess while Harley is still playing checkers. In 2024, Royal Enfield organized something called One Ride. It is a global synchronized event where riders from around the world all go out on the same day, not to a destination, just out together, celebrating the simple act of riding. How many people participated in One Ride 2024? 41,730 riders across 66 countries in a single day. That's not a rally, that's a movement. They run Motoverse, a massive motorcycle festival in Goa, India that draws around 10,000 attendees every year. Music, custom bikes, riding events, camping. It has become one of the biggest motorcycle gatherings in Asia. They operate the Himalayan Odyssey, a multi-week adventure ride through some of the most challenging and beautiful terrain on Earth. Riders come from around the world to participate. These events sell out months in advance. Royal Enfield is not just selling motorcycles. They are building a culture. They are creating experiences. They are giving people reasons to feel like they belong to something bigger than just owning a product. This is exactly what Harley used to do. The HOG rallies, Sturgis, Daytona. The sense that buying a Harley meant joining a family. But Harley's community is aging out. The rallies are getting smaller. The average attendee is getting older. The energy is fading. Young people do not want to join their father's motorcycle club. They want something that feels like theirs. Royal Enfield understood this before Harley did, and they acted on it. Number 3, the Milwaukee move. This is the part that should keep every Harley-Davidson executive awake at night. In 2016, Royal Enfield opened their North American headquarters in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If you do not know motorcycles, let me explain why this matters. Milwaukee is Harley-Davidson's city. It is where the company was founded in that wooden shed in 1903. It is where the Harley-Davidson Museum sits. It is where the company is still headquartered today. Milwaukee is to motorcycles what Detroit is to cars. It is the spiritual home of American motorcycling. And Royal Enfield planted their flag right there. Not in Los Angeles, where the weather is perfect for riding. Not in Miami or Austin or some neutral ground. They chose Milwaukee, Harley-Davidson's hometown. They opened an experience center. They built out their dealer network. They made a statement. Royal Enfield now has 160 dealerships across North America. Their US sales are up 11.6% year over year, while Harleys are down by double digits. This isn't just business strategy. This is psychological warfare. Royal Enfield is saying loudly and clearly that they are coming for the American market. They are coming for Harley's crown, and they are doing it from Harley's own backyard. So where does this all end? Look at the trajectory lines. Royal Enfield is growing at 10% a year. Harley is shrinking by double digits. Royal Enfield is expanding manufacturing capacity to 2 million units. Harley can't fill the capacity they already have. Royal Enfield is building community events that draw tens of thousands. Harley's events are getting smaller and grayer every year. Royal Enfield is profitable and expanding. Harley is losing money on their core business. The market has already made its judgment. A 10-to-1 market cap ratio is not a close race, it is a verdict. Investors are voting with their money, and they are voting for Royal Enfield. Could Harley turn this around? Theoretically, yes. They would need to slash prices dramatically, even if it hurt margins in the short term. They would need to build bikes that actually appeal to younger riders. They would need to create experiences worth showing up for, not just coast on nostalgia. They would need to figure out electric before someone else eats their lunch entirely. They would need leadership that actually understands motorcycles and motorcycle culture. They would need to move faster than they have ever moved in their history. The problem is, every year they do not do those things. Royal Enfield gets stronger. The gap gets wider. The demographic crisis gets worse. The window gets smaller. At some point, and we may already be past it, the damage becomes irreversible. For over a century, Harley-Davidson meant freedom. It meant rebellion. It meant the open road and the American dream and everything that symbolized: movies, music, culture. Harley was woven into the identity of what it meant to be American. But dreams change, generations change, and sometimes the company that invented a culture cannot figure out how to keep up with it. Royal Enfield did not beat Harley by being louder or flashier or more American. They beat them by being cheaper, smarter, and more connected to what riders actually want in 2026. They beat them by building communities while Harley was resting on the communities of the past. They beat them by showing up in Milwaukee and saying out loud, "This is not your market anymore. We are taking it." The numbers do not lie. A $22 billion swing in market capitalization over 2 years, an 8-to-1 sales ratio, operating losses where profits used to be, a CEO from Topgolf running a motorcycle company, an electric division selling 33 bikes in a quarter while losing $75 million a year. This isn't a competition anymore. This is a takeover in progress. And based on everything we've seen, Harley doesn't have an answer. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit subscribe. I cover business stories like this every week, the ones where the numbers tell a story that the headlines miss. And if you want to see another company disruption playing out in real time, the video on screen breaks down exactly how that's happening. Click it now.